welcome to the Long Take Review, a film podcast with one eye always on the Oscar race. I'm your host, Jen Sobchak-Bankard, and I'm here with only one other turkey today. More on that in a minute. Yeah, to you, it's Thanksgiving. To him, it's Thursday, right? It's PT McNiff. How's it going, PT?
It's going wonderful. I realize I don't have a Thanksgiving-related quote to share to try to be quippy on my way in, but I am excited for the holiday, and I'm excited to be here and talk to you, even if, as you mentioned, we are down one long take reviewer for the episode.
Yes, Greg sends his regrets. He was planning to join us, and then life came up, so he can't be here today. But we do have his picks in hand. We don't have ways to explain his picks for what we're about to do, but we do have them. We are here today for a special edition of the show. We're not reviewing one film. We're not doing kind of like an Oscars type thing. We are actually just recommending some movies that you should watch over Thanksgiving.
We know that recommendation algorithm, the episode.
Yes, that's true. So yeah, we know, we know, and we've actually been talking about a little bit more off mic, but like we know that, Thanksgiving is a big time for the movies. Lots of people use that time with their families, like to either put something on at home or to make a trip out to the theaters. And so we really wanted to kind of get in here and give our picks for movies that we think that you should try to go see over Thanksgiving break. And we have different categories. We'll get into that later. So we have a good variety to splash around. And the big selling point here is that since the whole point of this episode is to recommend movies that you have not seen, presumably, and you would want to see, we are going to have the episode be entirely spoiler free. So you can listen freely and feel safe and warm and cozy that all of our recommendations will not spoil anything in these movies. And if we do accidentally, I will edit them out. But PT, what can listeners do if they are, even after all that turkey, hungry for more episodes?
If they want some leftovers of the long take review, they're welcome to go and check out the feed. They can follow us wherever they get their podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify, Overcast. Check us through the main feed on Substack on jensthelongtake.substack.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram and Threads at The Long Take Review.
Thanks, PT. So we are just about ready to parade our recommendations. You can see I really went hard with this Thanksgiving theme. But first, we need to do a quick movie news check-in.
Just in off the wire, it's your Hollywood news.
So I'm going to start with what, according to my social media feed, was the biggest news, but may not actually be the biggest news. But we got Pedro Pascal, Internet Daddy himself, is now going to be playing Reed Richards in the MCU.
Which, I mean, I was not able to join because I haven't yet seen the Marvel, so I did not join the episode, but please go check it out on the feed. Jen and Greg did a great job with it, or at least they did up to the spoiler warning, because that's when I stopped. And it does feel like that's sort of like the Marvels didn't land very well. Like, what's a piece of Marvel news that will get everybody happy? What about Pedro? And they just kind of threw that out into the world.
And I do really like that it was very rumory at first, and then today they were like, "Oh, guess what? We weren't just joking around. He's been confirmed." So I have no idea if that was planned. I was trying to think about that. I'm like, was this planned? This is all part of the PR stunt to kind of distract from the box office news for the Marvels, or was this like the internet exploded so much that they're like, "Oh, we better seal this deal"? I'm not sure, and not that it matters. I'm happy either way.
I also saw a rumor that, and I apologize for the potential pronunciation issues here, but Ebon Moss-Bachrach, who is the cousin in The Bear and was also in Andor and has been in other things, but that he may be the Thing in the Fantastic Four.
Oh, I did see that too.
But I don't know. That feels even squishier in terms of it's just sort of in talks. It's not like close to an announcement, but that rumor got out there as well, which is something.
If this feels very much like we've had a lot of bad press lately let's distract everyone with shiny things that have nothing to do with the MCU's past, right? Maybe X-Men are next. But yeah, they're like Fantastic Four feels like an easy way to be like, oh, look over here. Nothing's wrong. Everything's fine.
Like, look
Don't
over
get
there
excited.
as they're pushing Kang out the door,
Right.
on the other side of the room. But
yeah, so yeah, really, really interesting. And I feel like we just gotten like inundated with random Marvel news. Like those, I agree that those two were probably the biggest ones, but there was just also a bunch of like random. I feel like every time I look at my social media feed now, I'm just like some random Marvel news, a non-announcement is it's just popping up, and I'm just like, what is going on? But whatever, I'm here for it. Do you have any movie news, PT?
I do. The thing, the sort of thing that I saw, which I think was just chatter and has no real legs of going anywhere, but there was over the course of the last week some pushback within SAG-AFTRA towards the deal. And I'm now blanking on, maybe you guys already. I know you talked about the strike ending.
Right. We didn't talk about the blowback.
Okay, so there's some blowback about like this isn't strong enough, especially on AI like things. Like there's limitations to AI, but there's some sort of wiggle room loopholes that people are like identifying and saying we don't like that. And then what I mostly was seeing was pushback of like, take the deal, like within the sort of community, so people posting on social media who are in SAG-AFTRA saying, take the deal and we'll keep pushing and we have another negotiating time down the road. So I don't think there's enough kind of momentum to actually scuttle it in the vote, but the vote hasn't happened yet. So, theoretically it's not fully 100% done quite yet.
Wait, what was the 86% vote then? Because I saw that number being thrown around, that 86% of members.
I thought that wasn't like a binding vote. I thought that was some sort of like initial
the preliminary vote,
straw poll or something.
That makes sense. But
maybe I'm wrong, and I didn't double check on that. But what I thought was that it was still a few more days until it would be bound up. And then the other thing besides that is, there's sort of some of our final mystery box movies that no one had seen are starting to come out. People have seen The Color Purple. There's some varied reactions to it, mostly positive.
I haven't seen any of those yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. The ones that I saw all kind of seemed like it's like, who are these people? Like, it's when there's the aggregation of the first reactions are out, and it's like none of these are critics I've heard of, or people whose opinions I have any investment in. But some of them were a little bit like, make some weird choices, or that there's some of the directing approaches to it maybe don't work. But then other people seem positive on it. The acting is praised, that everyone is really does a really strong job there. Unclear if that's going to be enough to get them back into the conversation in Best Actress, or best, multiple people potentially in Best Supporting Actress. And then they're out of the first, like, not that this is a good way of thinking about it, but the Metacritic Rotten Tomatoes numbers for Wish came out, and they are pretty middling. They're like, 53 or something on Metacritic, and 60-ish for Rotten Tomatoes, which is just sort of sounds about right from what everyone has kind of been saying. I think there was always these little like glimmers of hope of like, this seems weird, but what if it's actually, quite good? And it seems like it's probably not quite good, and it's probably going to be a cromulent movie for people to watch with their children, and not something that's going to go out beyond that, outside the sort of, target Disney audience sphere. It's not going to be bigger like some of the other ones have been.
Right. It'll be because of that, it'll be interesting to see how this pans out in the awards race, because I feel like both the movies you just mentioned, Color Purple and Wish, a lot of Oscar pundits have placeholder predictions, being like, well, I have no idea if this is going to be in here, but it's the type of thing that could be, and no one's seen it yet, so I'm just going to hold a spot for it. So that's, the animated feature. I think in our predictions we had that in there because Disney always usually has something represented, and like, we hadn't seen this, so we don't know what its actual chances are. And even if it is middling, it still could very well get in
Sure.
at the same time. And then Color Purple was like, I think especially in the acting races, there was like a one spot reserved for like, well, somebody from the Color Purple could get in. So it'll be interesting to see once more people see those movies and they have their wider releases if they'll actually stick. I just saw this today, but the Golden Globes has a new home.
Oh,
so they've been through it reasonably so, because they've had lots of scandals and lots of problems, which I'm not really going to go in and bore everybody with here. And you can easily just look up HFPA and see what kind of rat's nest appears. But they last year they had no show, right? They had and their contract with NBC, I believe, was the network that was hosting them before, basically ended their contract and was like, we no longer wish to do business with you. So there was no show last year, but now CBS apparently is picking them up. So they will have a show. I didn't get to see what the date was, if it's going to be during like the normal time before the Oscars, and I think they're really desperate to hold on to that. We're the start of award season spot, so I wouldn't be surprised if their ceremony is then. And so a lot of people now are kind of like, are we ready to just have them be back? Weren't we really mad at them before? Like, weren't we boycotting them before? We're just fine with it now. So I'll be prepared for that kind of discourse as we sort of get closer to the start of award season proper.
Yeah, it felt like everyone had really kind of made the hard decision to let it go and be like, all right, that was a fun, weird thing that we always kind of knew. The process was very strange. Unlike all these other awards with huge voting bodies, this was like 70 or 80 people in this strange shadow organization that existed. And then all the bad behavior came out and all the bad sort of structures that were within it. And folks were like, okay, we're turning on it. And then they were like, we made some changes. And it seems that people are going to be like, okay, come on back. We do like another award where it's possible people are getting drunk in the audience. Like, that's fun.
Well, that's the thing. People like the vibes of the Golden Globes. It seems like they're pretty eager to be like, oh, they're all fixed now. They've fixed all their problems. We can just go back to having this like fun time. The other thing I saw too, which was very interesting, was that it's got it's got air on CBS, but it's also going to be streaming on Paramount Plus.
Oh,
so at least they're upping their distribution game, I guess, or I don't know what to call it.
They're trying to get those cord cutters to tune in.
Right, that's me. So
the same, hopefully for me soon. I keep saying I'm going to get rid of the cable I have, and then some sort of sports thing happens, and I'm like, well, I need it for sports. So
that's what I hear from everyone who cares about sports.
Yeah, it's tough.
All right, so we are ready to move on to our main event, which is giving our Thanksgiving picks. I put at Thanksgiving picks. Maybe I'll say our recommendation algorithm Thanksgiving edition. I did like that. There we go. It's now officially a recommendation algorithm. The episode.
Put it on the board.
We did it. So what we are going to do, we actually have 4 different categories because we wanted to make sure we were catering to different audiences that might be participating in Thanksgiving movie season. And so first we're going to have recommendations for things that are in theaters this week that you can go see over the holiday. And then we're going to talk about movies that are streaming or that you can watch at home that are kid or family friendly. And then we're going to talk about the opposite of movies you can watch at home that you should be watching after kids go to bed or not in the presence of small children. And then we'll end with, because when we're recording this, a bunch of movies are just coming out Thanksgiving weekend and opening that weekend, and so we haven't had a chance to see them. And so I just wanted to give us a chance to sort of hype movies that we will probably see soon, and would want to recommend people go see potentially, but we haven't seen them, so we can't really bank on that. So I just wanted to have a space to acknowledge those movies that are going to be kind of buzzing and coming out this week, but we haven't had a chance to see it. All right. So I think we'll start movies in theaters. PT, what do you recommend our fine listeners go check out in theaters this week?
So I'm gonna start as I should by weaseling in two answers to this question, but it's because the answer I initially kind of locked in my head may not actually be playing in theaters where people are listening right now, and that is the re-release of Stop Making Sense, which is the concert film by Jonathan Demme of the Talking Heads, performing in 1982. I think the performance is 1982 and the movie came out in 1983. So it was a 40th anniversary. It's been restored, remastered. The story, I believe it was a Rolling Stone article about how they actually, it was this sort of vault dive to get to the original negatives. So that story is super interesting. The movie is absolutely incredible. However, it's only sort of sporadically playing now. And so I was kind of sort of looking around and it's like, there's like one theater in like Massachusetts is playing it the middle of next week. And then, Illinois has a couple of showings on Tuesday. So there may not be, it may not be sort of right near wherever you are. And it's not on demand yet. It's not something you can watch on streaming and they've pulled the old version down. So that's my soft recommendation for something because I think that's, it's just an amazing experience, even if you're like, I don't really care about that band. I don't know if I know, a lot of those songs. First of all, I think that you would, Once in a Lifetime, This Must Be the Place, Psycho Killer, Burning Down the House. You have heard a lot of the songs, but you may not know them. But even if you don't, I think it's just a really good performance. So since that's not there, instead of looking back to the early 80s, I want to look back to the 70s, and I'm going to recommend The Holdovers, a movie we discussed at length in our episode, which you can go and listen to. Jen was very nice and not saying this. This is also a low-key direct people to episodes once they go and listen to our recommendations. So you can go watch The Holdovers and then come on back to the Long Take Review and listen to our long takes on it. So The Holdovers is a super fun, but also with like some, I thought, surprising moments of emotional depth. That is the Alexander Payne movie set at a boarding school in Massachusetts. It's not quite the right holiday because it's winter break. It's Christmas and New Year's in it.
But people use Thanksgiving as a soft launch for
true.
Christmas and holiday season. So
Target agrees, according to the trip I made to Target the other day. So yes, that's it is. It is. If you want to sort of go and get a potential new holiday movie into your rotation that's fresh and out in theaters, then this is a good one to choose. It's not, we didn't make the distinction for the theaters. It's not really family friendly. There's some cursing. There's some adult subject matter. I forget if it's PG-13 or R.
I believe it's R.
Okay, it's earned, I think. So it is. This is for adults, and don't bring the kids. But you can get a head start or get another check off the box for potential awards consideration if that's your thing. If you just want to sort of sink into the vibes, if you miss 70s style filmmaking and storytelling, or if you just like the era and want to hear it, or if you like seeing Paul Giamatti be a fuddy-duddy curmudgeon fussing around, which, who wouldn't, I guess? This is a good movie to go and see and have a good time with.
Yeah, I've heard many critics since we did our own review saying that this could be career best for Paul Giamatti, or people just saying this is the best he's been since Sideways, which granted was a very long time ago. So, if you're at all a fan of him, like this is a must see. But in terms of a good movie to go out and see Thanksgiving to get in the holiday spirit, I feel like this is a good movie if you want to get in the holiday spirit, you like holiday themed movies or movies that take place during the holidays, but you are not a Hallmark movie person, right? So because I feel like if you're going into it hoping for a Hallmarky movie, you're not going to get it. This movie has a lot more darkness to it, but also the warmth we associate with holiday movies. But it is kind of more complex and more sophisticated than your average Hallmark holiday movie. So that's kind of my main recommendation. If that sounds like you want to get warm and cozy and see scenes with snow and the holidays, but you want something a little bit more to actually bite into, I think this is a really good pick. And apparently it's, people are saying that it's getting an uptick. Like the box office for The Holdovers actually is doing really well. That's what I heard from a couple places. So that's nice.
Yeah.
And we should be pitching the plot premise of these movies if people haven't listened to our previous episodes about them. So The Holdovers, as PT said, takes place during the 70s. It takes place at Paul Giamatti plays an ancient civilization teacher at a boarding school, and The Holdovers, the title refers to the group of kids that are stuck at school over the holidays. They're holding over the break, and Paul Giamatti's character has to babysit them. There's one student in particular who's played by an actor who's like a brand new discovery. His name is Dominic Sessa. He was actually discovered at one of the schools that they were filming the movie at. So he's just like a kid, like a high school kid who's in drama class or something like that they found. And so he plays one of the students that sort of like is at odds with, going head to head with Paul Giamatti's character. There's also Divine Joy Randolph is amazing in this movie. And she plays the kitchen manager at the school.
I tried to be wheelchair. I was just like, it's at a prep school, but I think that you're right. There should have been that. Actually, what happens is good to add in.
Yeah. So hilarity ensues,
yes.
and
tears at some point.
It's great. It's just it's very funny.
Yeah. Jen, what are you recommending to folks?
So I am recommending the Marvels, in spite of the Marvel working really hard to battle a bad news cycle around this movie because the box office has been pretty abysmal. But if you go and listen to the review that Greg and I did last week, it's really, or actually earlier this week. It feels like it was a while ago. But I think it was just on Monday. It is a really fun time. It's like if you don't worry and fuss about the MCU of it all, and you just focus on these are three really charismatic actors playing three fun superheroes and having a good time, and it's goofy and weird, and it's only 90 minutes. This is the thing. We have to, I think, in thinking about my recommendations for this episode, I'm like, okay, the folks who are like movie nerd interested, but not fully committed, right? So that's why they're listening to us, is like, we're the go-between, right? They're not as committed. They're not going to go see Killers of the Flower Moon.
Right. Yeah.
Over Thanksgiving.
I noted that didn't make anyone's chart on the table, because it's like, the people who are going to commit 3.5 hours to that movie have probably already seen it.
Right. And especially after Intermission Gate, I feel like the one thing we learned from Intermission Gate is that people can't sit in a theater for 4 hours. And so, or they don't want to, because they have needs. They have to get snacks. They have to go to the bathroom, and they don't want to miss any of the movie. So that I feel like this movie is an easy sell for me, because how often do we get movies that are only 90 minutes? This would be perfect for you wrap up Thanksgiving dinner, pop out to the movie theater for a nice 90-minute jaunt, and come back. You still have room for pie, right? Like I feel like this is a good. It really fits the occasion well. And I would say just don't worry too much about the whole MCU factor, because I think that's one of my theories as to why no one's seeing this movie, is because they're like intimidated by, well, I haven't watched all the shows, and I don't really know these characters, and so I guess I'll skip this one or catch up with it later. But you don't have to.
I saw some discourse on social media. Now I can't remember who coined the term, but someone had said there was the concept of narrative debt, and that like they're sort of so like, you're so far behind. You're so like, I don't know what I need to like do to catch up. I have to follow all the TV shows now, or like one of the people is in one of the TV shows, another one's in one or two of the others. And then there was the main character, but that was a few years ago. I don't know. I'm out. And it sounds like this is a movie that doesn't, you don't need all of that. Like you'll be fine if it's just sort of like, they're superheroes. They'll explain it. They'll explain it as it goes on. It's not that crucial to know, every minute detail of the 30 movies and hundreds of hours of television shows leading up to this.
So the Marvels, the only thing you need to know, don't think too much about the plot, because it's like a superhero convoluted plot. But the main thing that is the draw is that these three superheroes, their powers become entangled, and so every time more than two or more of them use their powers at the same time, they swap places. And so it's like they're in the middle of a fight and they have to swap places, and it's really, really funny. It's really well choreographed and fun to watch. Yeah, so I would say that if you are good at not overthinking superhero movies, this is perfect, because it's really funny, it's goofy, it's got that kind of like campy sci-fi romp space adventure kind of vibe to it. And I think if you're into that, right, if you like Doctor Who, you like Star Trek, I think this is a good fit. So you don't even necessarily need to have any investment in the MCU. So I think to have a, you know, nominally a good time at this movie. So
Great.
That's my pick. And it's family friendly also, which I know is tough. Like if you're going out to the theater and you have younger folks in your group, it can be hard to decide what to go to. So that's my pick.
Okay.
So two different crowds going to the Holdovers versus the Marvels.
It could be, you know, there's a subsection of people go to the Holdovers in one screen and everyone else goes to the Marvels.
Right.
And now Greg did have his picks on the board before he wasn't able to join us. And his pick for movie to go see in the theaters is Priscilla, the new Sofia Coppola movie about Priscilla Presley and her relationship with Elvis, a movie that I don't believe either Jen or I have seen. So, we could ask Greg to, like, when things are better, he could record a little drop and we can put it in. Oh, good point. That's interesting. Very good, Greg. I like that.
I can at least summarize what this movie's about. So this is the antithesis of the Baz Luhrmann Elvis that came out last year, right? So that was like maximalist, you know, really loud, glamorous. Elvis is a consummate performer. Like that was that, you know, that the Elvis, the icon, that was what that movie was about, right? This is the opposite, because it's through Priscilla Presley's perspective and is more focusing on her relationship with Elvis. It is sort of the quiet, understated, lonely, disturbing, kind of like haunting. At least that's my understanding of it from watching some clips of it and stuff like that. It's a lot of, and the actress's name I'm going to forget, but a lot of like, you know, coiffing hair and putting on fake eyelashes. It's Sofia Coppola. So like if you like Sofia Coppola and you want kind of the sort of more complicated, intriguing, disturbing indictment of Elvis, and to a certain extent, or at least an examination of their relationship. So for example, my mom's a huge Elvis fan. Even though she loves Elvis, I would not take her to go see this movie. Because I think it would just upset her to know that like this musical artist that she loves has some problems. I
mean, does she not know that Elvis had some problems? Like, was that?
I think she'd just rather not think about it.
That's fair. Okay.
And I respect that, right?
Yeah,
like, you want to enjoy the music and the idyllic time period that Elvis is emblematic of. She's a big like Blue Hawaii Elvis fan. You know what I mean? Like as opposed to like, you know, Vegas Elvis or something like that. So yeah. I've heard lots of good things. A lot of people sort of saying, is this the best Sofia Coppola movie since Lost in Translation? And apparently the performances, Jacob Elordi as Elvis. That's the thing, is like people might be going to see this movie just because they like Jacob Elordi. He's hot stuff right now. So
yeah. And it's Kaylee Spaney.
Oh, there we go.
I'm going to say is the pronunciation of it, is playing Priscilla. But yeah, I think, you know, between Jacob Elordi and Austin Butler, regardless of the events of the movie, Elvis's reputation with younger people is strong because he's being portrayed by two heartthrob young actors. So good for you, Elvis. You've got that going for you, at least. Great.
So next up we have films. If you don't want to, you know, especially if you live somewhere where it's already cold, you know, you want to sit by the fire by your TV at home. We're going to talk about movies that are streaming that are kid or family friendly. So these are the movies that you could, you know, after your meal, sort of like everyone plops on the couch and checks out together. So I'll go first. So I have my actual pick, but I feel like I also want to pitch it with a double feature with another movie that I feel like has kind of similar things. So my pick for here was Nimona, which is an animated film on Netflix. It came out a while ago. I actually just saw it recently, and so here's my backstory that you probably don't need to know, but helps me make sense of this. Is that I'm always trying to get my kids to watch movies, and they largely reject the long format in favor of shorter things, uh, or things that aren't as quote unquote scary. And by that, they mean suspenseful with conflict. They like watching things that do not have those things usually, or they prefer that. They get nervous or anxious when we're watching something that has kind of like the point in the second act where like everything falls apart and like they don't know what's going to happen and stuff like that. So Nimona, I tried when it first came out, and within like 10 or 15 minutes they were like, no mom, this is too scary. And like I didn't necessarily agree with that, but I want to respect their feelings, and so we stopped watching it. I didn't finish it, but recently I was like, oh, let's try it again, because I really do want to finish this movie. And they were totally engrossed, and this was only a span of like 2 months, so like they haven't really like grown up that much in that time. I mean, kids do grow up fast, but like it's not like it was a year later or something like that and they've matured. So they were really into it. And so the premise of Nimona is that there's this kingdom, and it's sort of like an interesting, like it's a medieval kingdom, but in modern times. So there'd be people dressed as knights in armor with cell phones. So that already is kind of like, scratching an interesting like sci-fi fantasy itch. But the premise of the movie is that there's this knight that's about to kind of be inducted into the society, the like little club of knights. And the big deal is that he is not a descendant of Glorith, who is like their kind of like idolized like icon, like their, what's the word, it's not icon like iconography, but it's like this
Scion?
Exalted, I don't know, like this exalted figure in their culture.
Sure. Yes.
Right. So they got a huge statue of this knight named Glorith who lived a long time ago.
He's the hero. He's the like uber hero.
Yeah.
Of the society.
And it's actually a she.
Okay, excuse me. I haven't watched it.
It's fine. It's fine.
Problematic assumptions happening over here.
Well, so that's the thing, is that this movie actually does a pretty good job in terms of diverse representation. So it's like the knights are, have different, come in different identity flavors in a way that I think is nice. But yeah, so the idea is that he is about to be kind of inducted into this circle of knights, and then a scandal happens, and I won't get into too much because I don't want to spoil it, but like something dramatic happens where he's suddenly persona non grata.
Okay.
And then he meets up with this like shapeshifter character named Nimona, who's very fun. Like she's really funny, and she can like, and so she is like very cheeky and sort of like changes into lots of weird animals very rapidly. And like, so it kind of has, oh, actually this is a good reference point for you. She's sort of like the D&D druid.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like where it's like she's just always changing into something else.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a really good movie. It has a great message about tolerance and acceptance, and sort of like, and it actually gets a little deep into sort of themes of like when you are not accepted by society, sort of like the self-loathing that happens, which I thought was actually fairly sophisticated for an animated movie in which the main character turns into like a giant pink whale. Maybe that's giving away too much. So that's my pitch. And I think like, yeah, if your kids, so my kids for reference are 4 and 7, one just turned 7. And so, I think they were just at the right age. Any younger than that, I probably would say it just would be kind of lost on them probably. It stars Riz Ahmed as the main knight. Great voice performance. He's great. But yeah, so that's my pick. My smuggle to the Mallory Rubin smuggle. If you listen to any of the Ringerverse podcasts, this is a typical thing she does when they do like a draft or something. She always tries to sneak in other things. So my double feature with this would be, if you like Nimona, go watch Wolfwalkers, which actually I think overall is a better film. But that's made by I can't remember their name now. The studio that did Book of Kells and The one with the seals.
It's
Some
Songs of the
trees.
Sea.
Yeah, there we go.
Of the Sea.
Yeah, I love all of their movies. But Wolfwalkers is like particularly outstanding. And I want to pair them as a double feature because it has kind of a similar plot of like shape shifting and like who's the monster, who's the villain, and acceptance and ignorance, and like the themes are very similar. The animation style could not be more different. Nimona is sort of that like new age, not quite Spider-Verse level, but it's like that kind of cutout, not quite 2D, not quite 3D animation style. Wolfwalkers is just is a lot more kind of like not painterly, but looks like illustrations, in kind of a more traditional sense. So yeah, Nimona's on Netflix. Apple Wolfwalkers is on Apple TV Plus.
Excellent. I both of these movies are ones I haven't seen. With Wolfwalkers, I meant to see the year it came out, and it like
I got nominated for an Oscar.
It did.
It's
I'm
really
no
good.
Greg. I don't get to see, I don't see everything. Now I'll be peer pressured because of the show. But no, I've only heard of Nimona from you, which I think probably speaks to the algorithm that's on my Netflix versus yours. But it sounds incredible, and so I'm definitely going to be checking this out once the semester is over. I think catching up on a lot of these movies will be good. I'm gonna just share first, to sort of not so it doesn't go last each time. Greg's pick is the Super Mario Brothers movie, which was a big hit from earlier this year. Maybe this is one of the sort of ones that it's possible everyone or many people have already seen, except of course, again, I'm in a weird animated blind spot. I still haven't watched this either.
What?
Because you get into the semester and I'm supposed to be grading papers. There's things that seem more important. I'll get to it. So there's these plumbers and they're Italian, and there's a princess, and there's she's usually in another castle. That's my memory of it. And there's a song that Bowser sings that I know is important.
For
Jen,
that alone.
Jen, do you have more to add?
I mean, I'm gonna second the peaches. It's great, and Jack Black, to me, I think is the main draw for this movie. I mean, if you're at all a fan of Nintendo, then there's a ton in this movie that you will enjoy. And I would say this, if we're thinking about it in the context of Thanksgiving, this is a great one that, because even if your part of your family's already seen it, is pretty rewatchable, especially for kids. Like my kids have watched this more than once, and because they kind of can dip in and out, they're like, oh, like it's the Mario Kart section, or oh, like it's Donkey Kong, right? Like they're, so and my daughter in particular is a big fan of the Mario suits, so like the Tanuki suit and like the different suits that he might be wearing, which is prominently featured. So yeah, I would say that like this is a great one to be like, oh, like Grandma and Grandpa have never seen the Super Mario Brothers movie. Let's throw that on. And then even if some people have seen it already because it was out a while ago, that I don't think anyone's gonna complain about having this on in your home. Yeah, the soundtrack's great. It does a really good job of kind of like remixing those classic Mario tunes.
Yeah, I got to do an animation catch-up day.
This is your homework now. This is what I'm realizing. You got to go watch all these movies in this category and report back.
Yeah, except I don't have to watch the one that's going to be my pick. Although I did watch it way later. I didn't watch it until it came to free streaming, and I was like, has anybody talked about this? Has anyone mentioned that this movie is good? And that movie is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. The third biggest movie of the year, the fourth biggest now. I think in terms of domestic box office. So yes, I think that people have in fact seen and heard about this. But for those of you who maybe haven't, this is the second installment of the sort of Spider-Verse series. It is the animated story of Miles Morales, who is he has the traditional was bitten by a radioactive spider and became Spider-Man. But his story is inherently linked to connecting to different universes. That is partially shown through the animation style, the editing, the sound. It is visually stunning, these movies. If again, if you're out there and you haven't seen it yet. So it's a continuation of his story, and as well as the story of another parallel universe Spider-Man character who is a Spider-Woman, and that's Gwen Stacy in her universe is the one who is bitten by the spider, becomes Spider-Woman. And she has her story and Miles has his, and they start to intersect and cross through different universes and parallel times, and fight different enemies and meet up with people who are allies, potentially not allies, and it's similar, not in the same way we were saying about the Marvels, where it's like you kind of want to hand wave away when you're trying to describe it, like it's a bunch of superhero stuff, like you'll get it, but these work on just such a pure, raw, emotional level of really tapping into what connects people to this character in particular, which is the coming of age component, and how it's about sort of finding yourself, coming into yourself, and the things that you have to let go of in life, and the attachments you're trying to form as you are passing through adolescence and striving towards being an adult. And I think it does such a good job of capturing it, and is so well constructed, an incredible soundtrack. Again, I feel like an idiot in November being like, this movie's so good, because when it came out in June and everybody realized it was great then. But to Jen's point of, you're sitting around with your extended family, this is a movie that I think a lot of people could connect to. I can kind of see, like, I'm thinking about, what if if my grandparents were around, or at this point even like my parents, they might be like, what the hell is happening? Because it's so it is jumping around so much, like they might just be like, this is weird.
It's not your parents' Spider-Man.
Yes, and they would be like, oh, okay. So it might go a little hard for people that are pre MTV generation. The editing and jumping around might just not be their wavelength, but it's I think there's enough artistry and enough kind of what you can get out of the characters, even if the structure of it is a little too much for you, you can still, I think, connect with the characters, and I think that kids love it. I think that adults and grownups can buy into it as well, and yeah, I mean, it's pretty much a masterpiece. So it's worth checking out if you haven't, if you were like me and you were a fool and didn't see it beforehand, or if you want to watch it again and show it to people in your family. This is a good one to revisit. And if you have the sunk cost of a Netflix subscription, it's on there now. So you can just go right on Netflix and watch it.
Right, which a lot of people might not even know, because I feel like most people probably would assume it would be on Disney Plus.
Right.
Because it's Marvel, but
the weird Sony deals,
yeah, and it might be on Disney Plus eventually. Like a lot, it's not like there are no Spider-Man movies on Disney Plus, but yeah, this is one that, like, right. I remember when I looked it up, I was like, Netflix, what? But so this is the movie that I feel like if it comes up at the dinner table at all, there's going to be someone at the table who hasn't seen it, and then it's going to be one of those movies where it's like, well, we got to watch it right now. We got to watch, which is, I think, always fun. Right, to be, and that's kind of the joy of just having Thanksgiving be a pretty low impact event, because it's like you're eating and then it's just like, let's be lazy afterwards usually, right? And so movies are a perfect fit for that. And so yeah, I feel like the only thing I want to say with this one is, and some people might say that this is a spoiler, but I feel like if you haven't seen this movie yet, it's worth knowing it is part 1 of 2, even if that's not in the title. Yeah. But that's not to say that if you're like, oh, I don't plan on seeing another one of these, that you shouldn't watch it. You know what I mean? Like, that's not to say like, oh, so avoid it because it's not finished, because it does feel like a complete movie. But in terms of the story, when it ends, you'll be like, wait a minute, what? Like, that wasn't as resolved as I thought it might be with only one movie. And so I feel like if people are going to be,
it's true,
like it better if they're prepared for that.
Yes, and I think it's also fair to say it's not even that it's part 1 of 2; it's part 2 of 3, because Into the Spider-Verse was the first movie from 4 or 5 years ago, and you don't have to have seen that to see this movie. But it probably helps. Like they do enough of a recap where you can kind of, you get all the information you need if you want to, and you could always go back and then watch it. But it is a continuation and is designed like a Back to the Future, a Matrix, a Pirates of the Caribbean, where they're making 2 and 3 together. So 2 ends with like a very clear like
there's more.
This is not an open-ended storyline where like maybe we'll come back down the road. This is the halfway mark of the story we wrote, and the second half is coming in the third movie. So that is a good caveat. Which, yeah, if there's a group of people, none of whom have seen it, it would be good to let people know, because sometimes that could really, even if you're having a great time, your gears can be grinded when it ends, and it's just like, what the hell? Like, I wanted to see the next thing, and it isn't there yet.
My last pitch for this would be, not that I don't know. This is probably the movie that needs the least pitching out of everything that's on that's on our list. But my last pitch for this would be, if you are a Spider-Man fan, but you are more of a live action movie fan than like you don't do much animation, I would say that this is still 100% worth it, because it's basically like Spider-Man No Way Home on steroids.
Yes.
There's a lot of spider people, and it's fun.
I feel like the crappy thing is it's Spider-Man No Way Home, but what if it was really good instead of just pretty good?
Hey!
But hey, I like Spider-Man No Way Home. I kid Spider-Man No Way Home.
That was a great experience in the theater.
I had a great time.
People were hooting and hollering.
Yeah.
And it was really fun. I will admit that it like, when I rewatched it at home later,
you're like, okay.
I was like, well, this is still good, but it's not as like, it's not in my like top 5 Marvel movies or something like that.
Well, and it's interesting because, I feel like seeing Into the Spider-Verse and seeing No Way Home, the first Spider-Verse movie, seeing both of those in the theaters, I was like, well, this is awesome. Like, for different reasons, but being like, I had a great time. This is incredible. What a joy to have gone and seen this in a theater. And then that first home viewing for each of them was very different. Whereas like Into the Spider-Verse felt actually like better, even, where it's like, oh, wow, there's more to this than I even had thought. Whereas No Way Home, it was like, oh, it was sort of the moment. Like, it was the experience of being there. And there's, it's not the top movie that it may have felt like leaving the theater.
That's fair. I feel like we did a really good job in this category of picking things that will please everyone in your family, in the sense of like adults and children, you know what I mean? Like, and which is good because it's a family category, but like, I feel like, to me, good family movies pitch at 2 different levels, where it's like, it has humor, like like classic Pixar movies in the golden age of Pixar used to do so well, where it was like, there was sophisticated humor that goes over kids' heads. There's lots of stuff for the adults. There's good compelling stories, good characters, but then also like, kids just like Spider-Man and Mario, and presumably knights and shapeshifters. That doesn't hold up.
I like that we have I'm glad you snuck in the double feature, because I'm glad we have a couple of franchise brand movies and then a couple of unique independent stories, which are sometimes harder to come by in quality form in modern day media, for children especially.
All right, so up next we have movies that you can watch at home, movies that are available on streaming, but you do not want to watch if you have kids in your group, or you just want to wait until they're in bed. This is the one that you put on after everyone's asleep. So, PT, why don't you go first? Which one? You claimed this one very early when we decided.
I did immediately claim it, and the problem is I've got 3 potential smuggles. I've got like a documentary corner.
What are you doing?
Well, I'm just saying what I've got. I have a documentary corner with 3 different documentaries for 3 different kinds of people, and like I'm just acknowledging it's there, and maybe I'll get to it, maybe I won't. There's some really good documentaries out. If you're the kind of people who like documentaries, I'll just say that. But for the actual, like, my actual recommendation, which again was covered in in the feed of the Long Take Review, and you can go back to an earlier episode of it, is Past Lives, which is I think still my favorite movie of the year. It is a story, and of course I didn't have her the movie up, so I don't have her name. Celine Song, that's right. Celine Song wrote and directed this, and it's a a 3-part story of the interaction relationship between childhood best friends in South Korea, one of whom, as you know, in their childhood, moves, or is sort of taken, not taken, but her family moves to North America, and so she's removed from this friendship, and so it's we spend some time with them when they are. I think it's when they're 12, and then it's every 12 years is the next
right.
2 sequences. And so it's 12, 24, and 36 over the course of the movie, and the times in their lives in which they intersect and sort of reconnect, and where they are, how they're growing, sort of seeing into their lives as they change and evolve. And it's very much an interpersonal drama aimed at like adults who want to pay attention to a movie and experience a story with characters, and feel their sort of emotional. There's not a lot of like big blowout crying emotional scenes. There's no like action set piece. It's characters interacting with each other and trying to navigate the existence in modern life as things go forward. It's absolutely incredible. It's so well acted. Greta Lee is the main character. Nora, the main woman. Teo Yu plays both of these as the adults in the 2 adult years, and he's also incredible. John Magaro plays another person, an American who knows them. I'll leave that vague so people can experience it as it unfolds. But it's great, and it's set up explicitly in the movie as if we are sort of eavesdropping on, or sort of peering across a room at other people and like what their lives are, and that's sort of a feeling that permeates the whole thing of just witnessing actual human interactions, and it's incredibly well done, and it's available to rent. It's not a free streaming yet, but you can rent it on all of your major services, Apple, Amazon, etc. I think it's like $6 to rent at this point.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's made it down to that more
Yeah.
reasonable, like $4.99, $5.99
Yeah.
range, as opposed to like the $19.99 to rent.
That's tough.
Like I feel like I've seen that, and that's like, oh, who's doing that?
Well, yeah, that's the pandemic holdover, to use the term. That's the pandemic holdover from when it was like, you don't want to go to the movies. What if it costs like 1.5 movie tickets for you to just rent it at home? And that's a choice. But yeah, it is a video rental, for those of you old enough to think of it that way, or a DVD rental price, not a ticket to the theater price, but to watch it at home. So highly recommended. Again, it is sort of a movie where I don't know if it works quite as well if you're 2 screening it and you're kind of scrolling through your phone.
That's
you
what
want
I was
to
gonna
be
say. This is
locked
not
into
the
it.
movie to put on at home if you've got like if you've got guests and there's like football in the other room and like a bunch of kids running around. You know what I mean? Like this movie
doing the
is
dishes.
this movie's quiet enough that it's gonna need everybody's attention, or at least like an environment in which you can sort of like give it your attention. It's not because it's a quieter movie, it's not going to do well against a bunch of ambient noise, just in general, or distractions. But yeah, I totally agree with this. It's beautifully written. I would say this is a great movie if you like really profound novels. I think that's a good litmus test for someone who would like it. And because it's the screenplay is really, really well done. It's just full of these rich, sophisticated, profound conversations. And I really hope this one hangs on in the Oscar race. So like everyone keeps being like, about past lives. Is that over? Is this going to get in anything? So like, if this somehow misses like screenplay, I'm okay. I've come to accept that it might miss a bunch of other things, but if it misses screenplay, I'm going to be very upset because I feel like that's on us.
Yeah, I mean, long take reviewers out there. You can be the change we want to see in the world. Rent the movie, watch the movie, talk to people about the movie, go listen to the old episode where Jen and Antonio have a lovely conversation about it. And get the chatter up again for past lives. I'm gonna do one smuggle from my pool, kind of based on what we were saying. I don't know if it quite can like function with football in the other room and like a crowd of people, but I think it's the most sort of easygoing of the documentaries I was thinking of, and that is Defending My Life, which is the new Albert Brooks documentary directed by Rob Reiner that just premiered on HBO. Maybe is it HBO Max exclusive? I think it's HBO proper. Yes, so you could watch it if you're not a cord cutter and you have actual cable. You could catch it on HBO channels, or it's streaming on Max. And it's breezy, it's light, but Albert Brooks is super funny. If you don't know him, he is sort of a stand-up comedian, more sort of like a performance comedian who started in like the early 70s, I would say. And the first episode of Saturday Night Live had a short film done by him. And he did those sort of short films for a little while. And he started making movies. And he made movies like Lost in America, Defending Your Life, which this title is sort of a pun on. And he appears in movies. He's in Broadcast News. He's in Drive. If you are an animation person, he's the voice of Marlin in Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. He's done a handful of Simpsons episodes, and it's classic each time that he's on there. And he's a really funny guy. And so Rob Reiner's his best friend from high school, and it's sort of set up as the two of them sitting around a table and talking and going through his career and his background and things he's done. And he is very funny, but it's also it's got some like, oh, that's some it's got a little more depth to it than just like here's a recap of some famous person's history. It's got, because it has that sort of interpersonal commitment to it. It was really fun, and it led us to watch his first movie. This is what I'm watching instead of these animated movies. So apologies. We watched this, then we watched Real Life, which is a movie from the late 70s, basically about a reality show, which is wild in its own way. And it's very funny. And so the documentary is good. It's like 85 minutes, very short. And again, you don't need to you can kind of, it's a lot of bits where you kind of see like clips from things and them talking about it. You can kind of tune in and out as you need to. So if past lives, if you're waiting on past lives, or you did past lives and you need a sorbet, you need a chaser of that, Defending My Life, the Albert Brooks documentary is my other choice.
Nice. I like it. I have not seen that, but I would like to. My last comment, I will just tack on to the past lives promotion is sorry, I can't help it. Is that this is a movie, even if it's quieter or whatever, right? And it's not like a shocking twist, like it's definitely not that kind of movie, but it's still a movie that you will want to talk to other people about after you see it, to sort of like interpret it and break it down. And so I feel like for that reason, it's actually like one of the best kinds of Thanksgiving movies, right? Because it really is conducive to that sort of communal experience where you're gonna want to keep talking about it after you've seen it.
Yeah. But you also got to know your family or the people you're hanging out with, because if they're the people that want to like ask questions through the whole movie or scroll on their phone with the brightness up to 100% in a dark room, that it's not a good movie for that. Like those, maybe don't have them be your friends or your family anymore. But if you can't avoid that,
do you know those people?
Look, let's just say I did. No, I don't know. I mean, there are people who, are older people who do like to sort of check in on what's going on and be like, who's that person? Or like, what, like, how do they know each other? And it's like, well, we don't know yet. That's what, especially if you've seen it and you're showing it to someone else, they start asking you questions about like, well, what should I have known about that? Or what, and it's like, well, you wouldn't know. Like, you haven't seen the movie. It's a story. The narrative unfolds in a sequential order and information is given to you. You'll get that information down the road, but then they think they missed something, or, So, again, if that's going to be the vibe, maybe it's not the best movie.
You just made me realize this happens with my kids. which maybe is not helping the case of the adults that do this, but like it's like they'll be like, why is Nimona able to turn into a giant pink whale? And I'll be like, well, this is a movie, you got to watch it to find out.
Yeah, when a 7-year-old does it, you're like, sure, it's because they're 7, they want to learn. When it's a 47-year-old, it's like, okay, you need to take a walk. And
all right, we should get to my pick. So my pick is a movie that I just freshly finished before hopping on this call. And that is David Fincher's The Killer, which is on Netflix. This is a pretty new drop. I think it was just this week. And so this is the movie that, and I feel like we don't have a movie like this on our list at all, which I'm just realizing is kind of weird. This is the thriller. If you're looking for a stressful, tense, suspenseful thriller, this is great. I mean, if you're familiar with David Fincher's work at all, I don't think this movie reaches the sort of mind-blowing heights that something like a Seven or a Zodiac would, but I don't think it's trying to either. So, I don't think we should begrudge it for being something it doesn't want to be. But my premise logline pitch for this movie is, what if John Wick were more austere and kind of like Siddhartha? Like that's why that's my pitch for this movie.
I want to augment the pitch, but I don't think I can without spoiling it. So we'll talk off mic.
Okay.
About my addendum.
So the premise of this movie is it is about a professional assassin, so like a hitman type figure. It's starring Michael Fassbender, who I feel like is actually very good at this movie. And he hasn't been around for a while. The voice that he's doing in this threw me initially. I won't get into why necessarily, because I don't know, it wouldn't really be a spoiler, but it would, color your reaction or perception of it potentially. But at first I was like, is that him? Because this movie, my one thing is like the main prerequisite for this movie is, are you okay with a lot of first person voiceover? Because that's like the entirety of this movie.
Yeah, I will also say that the movie, I do think the movie is intentionally funny in many ways, and like the sort of seriousness, the self-seriousness of the voiceover, to me, I believe is
right. There's an irony to it a lot of the time. Yeah, I agree.
So I think if you're someone who's someone could start this movie up and be like, oh my god, we're just going to hear this guy talk about like how great he is at his job in a voiceover for like the entirety of this movie. Like, I mean, I think that's part of the bit, and that's, you're right to sort of react to it, and the movie is aware that would be the reaction. So I'll just say that.
Right. But at the same time, I feel like it does satisfy that if you like movies about professional killers and sort of like their cold and precise methods, and sort of this idea of like if you liked Dexter because it was like, oh, like I enjoy the mystery box of like how to kill somebody, right? The making of a murder, not murderer, but making of a murder. I feel like this will scratch that itch. But if you're looking for something it's not a flashy action movie by any means. It's very kind of like methodical and takes its time. But it's still very tense and suspenseful. Like I was very stressed out for most of this movie. But in a good way, and then like an exciting, like, oh, I'm into this kind of way. But yeah. Do you think is there anything else people should know about this? I guess like, yeah, if none of what I just said appeals to you, then yeah, this movie could be forever. This movie, I'm just gonna cut that out. No, because why did I bother saying that? This movie is not going to be for everyone. I think this is actually this is not for everyone on this list so far. But it's like, if you're the type of person that I just said piques your interest, then you should go watch it.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that's the only sort of caveat, is that this is the most violent. This is the most sort of bleak and dark story that we have on here, and some people don't like that. But it's true crime's a very popular genre. This isn't true crime, but how is a murder arranged? How do people go? What is the seedy underbelly world of hitmen, and how does that sort of occur in society? A lot of people do like that. So if you like it and you haven't seen this, I think this is This is a good time. I do think the pushback I've seen on it from people just, you know, talking to folks about it is what I'm with you. Like, I thought this was tense the whole time, and you know, sort of being like, well, what's happening, and feeling kind of coiled up during it. I think that some people found it boring when it was just sort of like, oh, like I don't care anymore. Like, they sort of checked out of it.
Oh, interesting.
Which again, I think that may be just that those may be people who
This is not their jive.
the kind of a movie that would appeal to them. But I think that there's, I don't want to call it like a minor movie in someone's filmography, but if you think about some of the movies that are generally thought of as minor notes in Fincher's filmography, like The Game or Panic Room, which, I mean, those are very different feelings, but that's sort of like, no, very, very rarely are people just like, everyone's got to go see The Panic Room. Like, that's a classic. It's really great, and people have a good time with it. It's tense, a tense thriller, and I think that this is similarly not the same exact vibe, but a similar success as a movie if you get on that wavelength.
Yeah, and I think there's like a second level to this movie that does require like being keyed into the movie's subtlety, is what I'll say.
Yes.
But I feel like if you miss that, I feel like there's still a lot at the base level to enjoy. So I don't think it's a requirement necessarily that you pick up. Because to me, there's like a couple key scenes and key characters in this movie where I'm like, oh, without this movie is not nearly as interesting. Yes. So I feel like
in particular, excellent performance that is really important. That is very late in the movie. I don't want to talk about it, but
saying who it is going to spoil it.
I don't think so. I mean, there are names in the credits. It's the and in the credits. It's Tilda Swinton.
Yeah, she's amazing in this,
and she's amazing. Yeah, I mean, unsurprisingly amazing. So Greg's pick for this, I think he was sort of pulling from I wanted to do Stop Making Sense before I realized it's not in the theaters anymore. And so he was like, oh, we can do an old movie? Cool. I want an old movie streaming for adults, and it's Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. I mean, if you don't know what Master and Commander is about, I can tell you that April 1805, Napoleon is master of Europe. Only the British fleet stands before him. Oceans are now battlefields. That's the context, according to the opening text of the movie. Russell Crowe is the captain of a ship. Paul Bettany is the scientist doctor that's on board with it. It's the early 1800s. You're on the sea. I think in the Pacific. I think they're by the Galapagos, if I remember correctly. It's been a couple years since I've seen this, but.
So, I'm going to interrupt you with a very embarrassing thing. So I have actually never seen this movie.
Look, there's been like 5 movies I said that I haven't seen.
I know, but this one is big. This is like Greg is going to be listening to this later and just like punching a wall. I feel like he's going to be like, why are my friends with Jen? She's never seen Master and Commander. Because, okay, there's no good reason for me to not have seen this movie. I went through a huge Russell Crowe phase. Gladiator was like one of the most important movies to me when I was in high school, and like, you know what I mean, like, and and I feel like I became a movie fan in the time of like Russell Crowe's golden age, like of The Insider and LA Confidential, and so like the fact that I haven't seen this movie is pretty egregious, I would say, and I do know that lots of people love it.
Again, and this is not just because I kept listing off all the movies I haven't seen, earlier in the episode. Everyone has their blind spots. The magic is you now get to experience the movie for the first time. And what a treat. I wish I could go back and see it.
Is it based on a book?
Yes, it was a series of books, I believe by Patrick O'Brien. And it's the same captain's name, and I don't remember the name of the captain. I was so busy getting the opening text called up because I wanted to make sure I got the oceans are now battlefields right. It's Jack Aubrey is Russell Crowe's character's name. And it was so clear. It's like the first book is called Master and Commander, and the second book or the third book is called Far Side of the World. So they kind of smashed some of the bits of the story together. But like it's so clear that like they've got like 10 or 12 books. Like they could have just made like 6 of these movies, and I think everyone would have, you know, cheered in the streets. But I don't think it was that successful. It was the like second most nominated movie for Oscars, I believe, the year that it came out. Unfortunately, it won 2 Oscars. The 2 Oscars it won out of I think the 10 or 11 it was nominated for were the only 2 it wasn't nominated up against Return of the King. So it just kind of got steamrolled. In another year, this could have been like a 5-6, you know, below the line, plus maybe pushing above it as well, a 5 or 6 award movie. You know, it's great. And if any of this sounds appealing to you,
is this catnip for the History Channel dads?
So yes, the 100%. What I was gonna say is that Greg was really leaning into his fatherness by choosing this. This is a me and my dad movie. We went and saw it in the theater the weekend it came out. We've watched it on TV like 4 or 5 times. There's a little like subgenre of seafaring movies that we love, and my mom will immediately fall asleep. Like within 10 minutes. Hunt for Red October, Crimson Tide, Master and Commander. We were like, let's go. Let's fire this up. And then my mom is just like, this movie is so boring and I do not care. So I need to caveat that. I don't want to put it on gender lines because that's not where it is. Although asterisk, I did put it on in our house, and Jasmine was like, this movie is really boring. So she also didn't like it. So again, we cannot, that's anecdotal evidence. We can't extrapolate from there. That's a hasty generalization. However, there, you do have to be on the vibe. It is catnip for History Channel dads. It's only the lack of a child that stops me from being a History Channel dad. I'm more, I'm a History Channel uncle. And that may not be where you are like in your life, for listeners out there, but if it's in any way appealing to you, you should be checking this out.
I probably would like this. So
I think you would.
And I think the other thing we can add too, in terms of like, is this fitting for the occasion? Let's say you have one family member that you'd like to that you're like really vibe with, and you just want to hang out with them. Right. So I feel like this feels like that kind of movie. Like if it's like you and your dad, right? I'm sure there's lots of other people who have a similar relationship to like 1 or 2 members of their family that get it, and then everyone else doesn't get it.
This is the splinter group. Maybe they want to watch all the football games and then do something afterwards. Like, or there's like another TV. You want to be on a big TV, that would be ideal. But like, maybe it's like, okay, we're gonna go watch this. Everyone else is watching Mario Brothers or Spider-Verse, so we're gonna go do Master and Commander. I will say, because I invoked her name, there was a request off list from our box here. Jasmine's streaming for adults recommendation is Theater Camp, another movie that we covered.
That's a good one.
Which is not kid friendly, although I would say if you have like high school kids, then like they could handle Theater Camp and they would vibe with the jokes, even if they're not 100% age appropriate. But that is a sort of mockumentary style. It's in the vein of a Christopher Guest type movie, where it's at a camp for theater kids in upstate New York, where the person normally in charge is not able to be there. So it's a ragtag group of people are trying to hold the camp together over the course of a summer. And it's very light. It's very funny. It's, if the killer and Master and Commander are like, or Past Lives are just like, oh my God, like that sounds like a lot. Theater Camp is a nice, light, adult oriented comedy that I think, again, not everyone has that sort of theater kid background experience to tap into it. But I think even if you don't, you can find some enjoyment in that movie. And that's still on Hulu, I believe. So you can stream that on Hulu now.
Yeah. And Master Commander, I looked up, is on Amazon Prime Video.
Perfect. That's exactly where it
subscription. Should be. Yeah. All right. No, that's a great call. I had forgotten about that. I think I didn't realize that one was on streaming. But that makes sense. All right. So our last category to pivot are the thinnest recommendations because they're movies we haven't even seen yet. So yeah, I mean, as I said at the top of the show, like I just wanted to have space for, because when I was kind of like putting together my list, I kept being like, oh, but this is coming out. Oh, but this is coming out. Like movies I'm excited to see, but that I just haven't had a chance yet. But that people, if they go to the theater, I don't know if anyone does this anymore. They just show up at the theater not knowing what movie they're going to see. Do you know? Do you think people do
I
this?
don't. I mean, maybe people do that, like especially older people, but yeah, I mean, now that it's reserved seats, I assume that you sort of choose in advance. But then again, like who knows? Maybe the holiday season, you just go out with whoever's there and make it happen.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give shout outs to movies that we've heard good things about or we're excited to see in the event that someone is like looking at the list of movies and sees one of these that we didn't talk about because we haven't seen it. So why don't you go first, PT? Because I think you're probably the most excited about this one movie out of all of us.
Well, look, I mean, we've already heard about oceans being battlefields in the early 1800s. What if all of Europe was also a battlefield? And that's because of Napoleon, the new Ridley Scott movie, which I don't know. I still don't know if it's going to be good. The reviews came out, like reviews for this came out, and they were wildly divergent. There were people that are like, this is absolutely terrible. This was, Joaquin Phoenix is out of his mind. Nothing, he's very interesting, but nothing he does really makes sense. Everyone says the battles are great, which on some level is maybe all I need to like have a good time. Like that's, if I'm going to go in trying to tell myself, I just want to see some well-constructed battles. Ridley Scott knows what he's doing with big action sequences, and that will be fun. But some people are saying like, no, it's very funny. It is, giving an accurate portrayal of Napoleon, especially Napoleon in his relationship with Josephine. And, it's not being, I don't want to say it's not being respectful, but it's not like trying to like put him on a pedestal or like elevate him. It's just sort of like, yeah, he was a weird dude and they were a weird couple and they were very weird with each other. And he treated people in strange ways and he made odd choices. And the movie is showing that. And I think that the people who are the most turned off by that seemed the less, I don't want to say less aware, but we're less interested in the history component of like, what are the stories of Napoleon and what happened, what he did and how he would set things up. So I think that, it's maybe strange because you just sort of see like the guy with the short guy with his hand in his coat and he's leading victories and being a conqueror of the world and not just like a big old weirdo who was just being a weirdo and got a lot of power. So
yeah, the comedy aspect of this in people's reviews, I was not expecting. I think I'm not going to remember who it was. One reviewer compared it to Veep. And I was like, wait, what? Because that is not the movie I was expecting. When you say Ridley Scott's making a movie about Napoleon, I would not have been like, oh yeah, it's like a weird, quirky comedy. But I feel like if I think about The Last Duel and sort of its indictment of powerful, egotistical men, which I feel like was one of the best parts of that movie, that then it kind of makes sense. Like this is late period Ridley Scott,
right.
That's willing to have a little bit more fun and be a little bit weirder. So that's been interesting. And so the other thing that I think people should know about this is that there is a much longer at least 4-hour version of this movie that is going to hit Apple TV Plus at some point.
Yes.
I actually don't know when. Maybe
it's not clear. Yeah,
not,
they haven't announced yet. But okay. It's when it like Killers of the Flower Moon. This is Apple is behind the production, or one of the companies behind it. It's going to be in the theaters for an amount of time. They haven't announced exactly when it's going to make it, but presumably by the end of the year. Maybe this will be in the Christmas recommendation algorithm. It will be available then. But when it goes
it'll just move to the streaming category.
Exactly. Well, maybe I'll see it and I'll be like, well, we can't all draft winners in our draft. That may be where we end up. But it's the I think when it hits streaming, I don't know if it's the same time the director's cut will come out or if they're going to sort of give that another like few weeks before it comes out. But yeah, historically when Ridley Scott makes big historical epics and he puts out like a 2.5 hour version in the theater and the reviews are like, this is kind of weird. I don't know. And then he's like, what about this 3.5, 4 hour director's cut roadshow version? Folks are like, well, this is a masterpiece. Like, of course, like you did the long version. And Kingdom of Heaven is the main sort of, the benchmark there. Although, some might also say the edits he's made over time at Blade Runner were improvements. So that's
I own the DVD box set for that. But I think that was for grad school purposes.
For Blade Runner or for Kingdom of Heaven?
For Kingdom of Heaven. Actually, both. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Actually, for Blade Runner, I own the collector's director's cut.
Yes,
correct. Like the little briefcase that has the unicorn in it.
Oh, yes.
It's beautiful. I love it so much.
Yeah. So yeah, there is going to be a longer version. The reviews that the reviews that were positive on it said, still go see it on the big screen just to experience the battles there. So again, if that's appealing to you, that's something to go and look at. If there's a type of person who will leave this episode watching Master and Commander on the biggest TV screen they can, and then going to see Napoleon on the biggest movie screen that they can, and they will probably have a good time with that. And I'll just note, I didn't see the Veep one, but Mike Ryan at Uprocks said in his review, he compared, or I guess he quotes a friend of his saying the movie was like watching Tim Robinson play Napoleon, which sounds incredible to me.
Wow.
For anybody who likes I Think You Should Leave, that sounds like that's, again, if I wasn't already in the bag for Ridley Scott for the battles and for the movie, that alone would get me to give it a chance.
So I flagged there will be a longer director's cut later, because the main criticism I heard from, at the very least, I think I was listening to Vanity Fair's Little Gold Men podcast, and I believe Richard Lawson was saying that you can feel that Ridley Scott didn't want to edit down this movie because it feels like parts are missing, or like that, like that it was not meant to be this length and it was meant to be the 4-hour version.
Mm-hmm.
And that they're suspecting that once they see the 4-hour version, it'll be like, oh, okay. Like sort of what you said, like, oh yeah, this all makes sense now. But apparently, Vanessa Kirby is back in the Oscars conversation, still kind of on the little on the outside, but I feel like now people are like, hey, like, she's really good in this. Like, could she get in? I don't know. She's at least on the list. So, that made me want to see it more as well. Yeah. So mine went from, because if you're a really loyal listener and you remember our hype for the year episode, I believe I drafted Emerald Fennell Saltburn.
Oh,
is that true? I think I did.
I'll confirm that. Hold on.
Or at least I talked about it as if I were going to, and then maybe it didn't end up making the cut. But I remember that this movie coming up on that episode and me being really excited about it. I have since shifted from this movie could be really awesome, I'm very excited to see it, just in general. I've now shifted more to morbid curiosity, because this movie seems to be very polarizing. Like, people are either like, this is a life-changing, amazing masterpiece of a movie, and there are other people who are like, I don't get it, this is weird. Which honestly echoes the reactions to Promising Young Woman a lot, which is a movie that I enjoyed. It is definitely a movie that's kind of out there and over the top, but I appreciated what it was trying to do. And so like, I'm like, oh. So now I'm just kind of like really excited. I'm like, am I going to think this movie is bizarre, or am I going to be really into it? I really want to know. And so, and the other thing too, is that like, it really is being touted as this like wild experience, and that lots of bizarre, and apparently how people like it will hinge on how they interpret some of the scenes. And so I'm like, I'm just really curious what that means in the context of the actual movie.
It does look beautiful. Like the filming of it looks incredible. There's been 2 trailers for it, and one of them has played before almost every movie I've seen in the theater at my local my Alamo theater downtown. So I've seen the trailers a lot. Yeah, and the trailers are the trailers. I mean, it wasn't, people are always like, it's really how you interpret it. And I'm like, it looks so straightforward, like not in a bad way, but it's sort of like, yeah, no, we just watched Talented Mr. Ripley. We went to a screening of it. a few months ago. It's like, I've seen it. Like, I know stories like this. Like, I get it. So I don't know what's going to happen in this story to make it so weird and to make it so polarizing. Because it seems like a good time. It seems like, a fun movie in a this is to channel Jasmine again. She's like, this kind of movie comes out like once a decade, of like someone on the outskirts, there's some or lower class person gets brought into the rich person's house or the rich person's, social circle, and something nefarious happens, and there's, like all kinds of, suspicions and all of that. And she's like, I'm in every time. Like, whatever that is, whatever iteration you're going to give me, I'm in. Like, I want to see that. And so, like, I'm curious what's so different this time that has people,
because I have heard the criticism that it is too much indebted to Talented Mr. Ripley. So I wonder if there's just like a part of this movie that people are like not getting or something like that, and that's what's making them be critical of it. So yeah, again, it has really piqued my interest. I'm not sure if I know it will be good, or I'm not confident at all that it will be good, but I am excited to see it. And that's a really good point that Jazz is making, and I feel like a lot of people have said that even if they're not that into the movie itself, that it has a series of really fun performances. Brosnan and Pike in particular, I think, has been shouted out a bunch of times. At Jacob Elordi, Barry Keoghan. And so we haven't actually said what you sort of alluded to what the plot was, but it's basically Barry Keoghan plays the student at Oxford who gets invited to this estate called Saltburn for the summer. And apparently salaciousness ensues? ? Just like, and beyond that, I actually don't know. Like, I don't know what else ensues. Yeah. And no one has come out saying that it's like an eat the rich movie. Like, I don't know how it like, yeah, I don't know what so again, that's really interesting. It's just like mysterious.
Yeah, it would be great if everything that's been in the trailers is in the first act or first half of the movie, because it kind of feels like, I've got a pretty good idea of like how most of this will go, and something will happen obviously later, but it's very curious to see, because again, it's what could it be that's so polarizing is what is intriguing me right now, along with Emerald Fennell's very interesting as a filmmaker. These actors seem excellent, etc.
You make a really good point, because I think Promising Young Woman also feels like it's going to be one movie and then takes a hard right into like a whole other thing. So maybe that's what this is as well. The one that I didn't realize I could put on my list until too late is Maestro, because I thought Maestro was coming out in December.
But it's coming on Netflix in December, but it's in the theaters, I guess, now. Or next weekend,
or like will be this like over this weekend,
right? Like Wednesday, I think, is when it starts playing in places.
And that's another one that
it'll be. I think it might only be in sort of Netflix approved theaters. Right, it's in the Egyptian here. It's in the Paris, in New York. I don't know if it's in more theaters than that.
That makes sense. Okay, so maybe I'm glad I didn't pick that one, because no one's gonna be able to see it after listening to this. But that's another one that has critical momentum behind it, because people keep calling it like it's more of an art house. It's less Oscar bait and more art house than we think, because I think I definitely could get from the trailer. Yeah, so we'll see.
You're skeptical. I don't want to say the machine, but I feel like there's a lot of stories of like, and Bradley Cooper presented it at a Directors Guild screening, and everybody lost their minds, and he talked about how he spent 3 years learning how to conduct 6 minutes of music, precisely. And it's like, these are the stories that are the narratives. Now he's back.
Welcome back, actors.
The strike's over. I mean, he could have been doing it as the director, I guess, but he had the actor story. I do just want to note, you did indeed draft Saltburn, as well as 2 other movies that are on the lists that recommendations that we've done.
Across the Spider-Verse.
Across the Spider-Verse and The Killer. You also drafted The Killer. So good job on that.
I know myself well, apparently.
And I only drafted 2, and the only crossover is I took Across the Spider-Verse. So you have that extra bit in your favor. I took Past Lives and, of course, Napoleon, which is maybe why I'm too invested in Napoleon, is because of the draft. But yeah, So that was fun.
Sometimes those kind of mixed reviews are actually really good for your expectations going into a movie,
Yeah,
because
that's
like
true.
you'll probably really enjoy it regardless, right? Even because you'll know like, oh well, people have flagged these potential issues, but like, so I'm just gonna go and have a good time.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, again, I had a great time with it, as you can see on our episode. But I think if I had gone to see Killers of the Flower Moon with more of the backlash in mind that has happened over the week or few weeks after it came out, I think that I would have been even more blown away. Because I would have been like, oh, I guess it's not going to actually be, blah, or like Leo's actually not going to be that good. Like it was still like might be the best performance of his career chatter when I went to see it opening day, and it took like a week or two for it to be like, are we sure Leo's good in this? Which is a wild take in the other
Oscar
direction.
pundit talk this week in multiple podcasts is, could Leo be the one that gets booted from Best Actor?
mean, that's the thing, is it's possible. I think he might be the victim of the complaints that the movie was still done by a white guy instead of an Osage filmmaker. And so it's just sort of like, well, they built the movie around him. Like, I guess we can lose him. So maybe, again, I am on the record. I think it's possible support solidifies around Lily Gladstone, and then something like screenplay, and people are like, good, that's it. We don't need to go beyond that. Even though it feels like a movie that could get 7 or 8, 6, 7, 8 wins, you get a bunch of below the line things, and then even again, actors or whatever. So yeah, curious, very curious. So just to close us off, now that we're an hour and a half into the 35-minute episode that was we said we would do. The last movie we haven't seen recommendation, which was from Greg. He wanted to go more long term rather than, because he felt he didn't have another movie he wanted. I guess we had jumped in and claimed the two he was going to recommend. So he was looking further down the road towards Christmas and the Christmas holidays thing, and he mentioned The Boys in the Boat, which is the new George Clooney movie set in the Great Depression about a rowing team competing at the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. A totally chill and normal sporting event that happened back in history. Joel Edgerton is the coach of. I'm assuming he's listed as Coach Ulbrich. I'm assuming that's the coach of the rowing team, and there are a bunch of strapping young men and women who are also listed in the cast, who I assume are rowers or people who know rowers and or around rowers or the Olympics. And I don't know anything about it. I vaguely heard there was a George Clooney movie coming out. It's apparently being released Christmas Day. Greg was very excited about it, and or at least excited enough to. He was riding that history dad energy into a 30s sports movie. And that's his recommendation. Keep that in mind.
And I think he's thinking about movies to see with people you spend the holidays with. Like,
yeah, of course,
it makes total sense in that context.
It feels, in that, sort of like, I remember like Unbroken being a movie of like, World War II athletes, like human spirit over the bad guys we fought in World War II. Like that's a movie that's going to get a lot of people in the family together. So hopefully we, if people like this, if we like this, maybe we'll do another one heading into Christmas, and Greg will be able to join, and he can share more about The Boys in the Boat.
Right. So he doesn't have to be screaming into his pillow as he's listening to us and totally botch his picks.
Right. Or he's playing a real long game where he's like, I don't want to bring it up in the Christmas episode, the holiday episode. I'm bringing it up now so I can. I'm wasting it so I can have my stronger pick later on. Not this isn't a strong pick, Greg. It's a wonderful pick. Boys in the Boat. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's waiting.
Can't complain about George Clooney.
He's made
in front of or behind the camera, in my opinion. I mean, like, not everything's a home run, obviously, but like, as soon as I said that, I was like, oh, I gotta walk that back.
You're like, all those great George Clooney directed movies, like, I do like Good Night and Good Luck. I will say
that one. Yeah, that's good.
Anyway,
I compared this to Leatherheads, which is like a cute movie, but is not very good. Though I'll have to check with Greg. I might have actually seen that with Greg in a theater a long time ago. I'll have to look up what year
Maybe
it
he
came
liked
out.
it. Maybe
See
he
if
liked
it
it more than
tracks.
you did.
Yeah, and now he's just like, wow, I can't believe. All
I
right,
appreciate we're an hour and a half in, and the only person that is we can guarantee is still listening. We are just making fun of his last pick.
yeah,
We're
it's not,
just driving away what audience we have.
it's not smart.
Yeah.
All right, BT. So if people are still listening, where can they, and they want more somehow, where can they find us?
Oh, Jen, as mentioned earlier, they can follow us on all their podcast applications, their various podcatchers. We are also, if I correctly do what I say I was going to do, we're going to provide links in the show notes for this episode to the episodes of the movies, any episode we have done of a movie that we mentioned. We will link to it. So if you are listening and then you go and watch it, or if you were like, oh yeah, I saw that movie, like I did like that movie, or I did want to hear more about it, you can go right to that episode via the link in the show notes. But yes, follow us, subscribe, do what you got to do on all wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Long Take Review. And if you would like to contact us directly, you can send us an email, thelongtakereview@gmail.com.
Great. And you can find me at Subchakchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI, on Instagram and Threads, and Qui-Gon Jen on Letterboxd. And also my written reviews on thelongtake.substack.com. I am moments away, although it's probably not happening tonight because this didn't end up being a short episode. I am really almost done. Probably, hopefully by tomorrow, be posting my written review of the Marvels and kind of going more in depth about sort of why I specifically like that movie. So that's also there. I don't know if I'll have that done in time to link in the show notes for this, but maybe we'll see.
Indeed.
Well, anyway, we want to thank you for listening and hope everyone has a happy and safe Thanksgiving. And we'll see you when we get back.
Holidays, safe travels, happy times.
Thank you for listening. You can follow The Long Take on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free to receive reviews of films with Oscar buzz, as well as new films and series from pop franchises like Star Wars and Marvel.